Well, hello. My name is Billy Diamond, and welcome to Season 2, Episode number 31 of the Branding for Entertainers podcast. And I hope that all my American listeners and friends had a wonderful and pleasant Thanksgiving. And if you're listening elsewhere in the world, of course, we're all gearing up for the Christmas holiday season, or however you might even celebrate that. But it's amazing to me that we're ending another year already. Gosh, 2022 just flew, and it just seems like all these years are just flying right by, right? But anyhow, I hope it's been a successful year for you so far. And if it hasn't been, I want to encourage you not to give up, because 2023 is going to be a better year for you. And as an entertainer, when it comes to your brand image, I want you to know that I'm here to help you. And I want you to get it right. And if you're getting your branding right, that means you're also getting your business right. And simply put, that leads to more money in your pocket, and it also leads to better gigs. Out of the 40 plus years that I've been in show business, I know the visual impact your brand has when it comes to your buyer and when you get to a gig. And if you have great visual elements like backdrops and banners, well, these folks, they really feel like they're getting a real solid show, as opposed to the guy that just comes in and rolls in with a suitcase, throws it on a table, or has a backpack. You know the guys I'm talking about. They skimp on these things because they're like, I want to just be right in, right out. But they don't see the value in branding. And that's what I want to talk about a little bit. But let me ask you this. If you're going to book an act, who would you pay more money for? Of course, it's going to be the act that presents himself better and has higher production value. And you know what? Here's the crazy part, is they didn't even have to work that hard to make that happen. It's just a little bit of extra setup. That's it. And you're making more money. And that's part of your visual side of your brand message. Also, part of your visual branding is your website. And visual branding is great. It's what I get excited about, and it's what I'm really good at, and what I've helped other entertainers all across the world do over the past several years. And whether that's helping them refine their image with a logo for a particular market that they're really trying to break into, or even fabricating props or custom props that are branded just for them. But the visual side is only one of three elements that we talk about here on the Branding for Entertainers podcast. And I'm excited about today's episode. And let me tell you why. Because we're going to hone in on the verbal side of branding. And here's the thing, my friends. Getting your message and your story right is part of the process of how you get booked. And not only how you get booked, but why you get booked. And most entertainers do this. They start by telling everybody their great accolades and all these things that they've accomplished and all these amazing celebrities that they worked with. You know the guys I'm talking about. There's the guys that have the photos of all the celebrities all over their websites to share, because they just want to rub elbows and think, oh, well, if you worked with them, then you must be good. But here's the thing. Rarely do they pull a potential buyer into their story or give them a reason as to how they're going to fix their client's problem. And here's what I do know after this many years of doing this, and that's that at the end of the day, the best products and the best services provide a bigger solution than what's on the surface. And here's what I do know. You're not just an entertainer that does X, Y, and Z that's out there doing booking after booking. And I can tell you this much, if you are doing that, you're probably working a lot of gigs, and I'm just going to tell you, you're leaving a lot of money on the table, because here's what I do know. You can't formulate your story enough, or you don't have effective copy that tells them what's in it for them. And I'm glad you're here, because I'm going to help you get it right. Here's the thing. There's nothing that's pulling them in that says, this is the act that I need to book now, because they pulled me into a story, or they helped me identify how to fix my problem. And verbal branding truly is an art form. I mean that. And now stick with me here, because, you know, this isn't meant to be boring. This is something you can absolutely get excited about. And I want to do something a little bit unorthodox as we get ready to go into today's episode. Well, my cadence and my vocal level is going to change just a little bit within the next couple of moments, so just indulge me here.
Here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4.
Long before podcast ever existed, we were introduced to broadcast radio. And maybe you can remember when we actually had to adjust a dial on a radio in order to listen to what we wanted to. You see, as a boy, I would tune between the AM and the FM dial. And some of you actually can remember that. Now, stick with me here, because in those days of radio, you would actually tune in simply to listen to a compelling story. And this is in the days before TV, and that was the way to go once we got TV. And it just keeps on churning this thing that we have with technology. Now, you might say, well, Billy, I'm kind of failing to see your point here, but listen, just hear me out. While radio might be dead, story has been around since the beginning of time, and effective writing and effective copy has been around in more recent years. And I want you to begin to actually think about your act, your show, you as the performer, as the highlight of a story that begins to tell your audience the perceived journey that you want to take them on, and the perceived solution that you can get to with them. So you might say, well, Billy, you said your cadence is changing, so why am I talking like this? Well, you see, I grew up with a legendary storyteller who was the podcaster of his day, and I would tune in diligently to listen to a man by the name of Paul Harvey. And I would actually like to take a moment and captivate you with one of his stories right now. And you might say, well, why are you going to share one of his stories? Well, I want you to hear how he was able to captivate and tell a story. And as you listen, I want you to be thinking about how you can take your buyer and your audience on a journey that makes them want to know the rest of your story.
He's lying there in the grass hiding and thinking. He has studied the little girl's habits, and he knew that she would come outside her grandfather's house mid-afternoon to play. He hated himself for this. In his whole miserable, messed-up life, he had never considered anything so callous as kidnapping, and yet here he was, lying in the grass, hidden by the trees from the house, waiting for an innocent, red-haired 2-year-old girl to come within reach. It was a long wait, time to think. Maybe all of his life Harlan had been in too much of a hurry. He was 5 when his Hoosier farmer daddy had died. At 14, he dropped out of Greenwood School and hit the road. He tried odd jobs as a farm hand and hated it. Tried being a streetcar conductor and hated it. At 16, he lied about his age and joined the Army and hated that too. When his 1-year enlistment was up, he headed for Alabama, tried blacksmithing, failed. Became a railroad locomotive fireman with the Southern Railroad. He liked that. Figured maybe he had found himself. At 18, he got married. But within months, wouldn't you know, she announced she was pregnant the same day he announced that he'd been fired again. And then one day, he was out job hunting, and his young wife gave away all of their possessions and went home to her parents. And then came the Depression. And now we'll pick up the rest of the story. Harlan just couldn't win for losing. He really tried. Once while working at a succession of railroad jobs, he tried studying law by correspondence, but he dropped out of that too. He tried selling insurance, selling tires. He tried running a ferry boat, tried running a filling station. No use. Face it, Harlan was a loser. And now here he was hiding in the weeds outside Roanoke, Virginia, plotting a kidnapping. As I say, he had watched the little girl's habits. He knew about her afternoon playtime, but this one day she did not come out to play, so his chain of failures remained unbroken. Late in life, he became a chief cook and bottle washer at a restaurant in Corbin, and he did all right until the new highway bypassed the restaurant. And then his expected lifespan ran out. He's not the first man, nor will he be the last, to arrive at the twilight of life with nothing to show for it. The bluebird of happiness or whatever had always fluttered just out of reach. He had stayed honest, except for that one time when he had attempted kidnapping. And in fairness to his name, it must be noted that it was his own daughter he had meant to kidnap from his runaway wife. And they both returned to him the next day anyway, but now the years had slid by and a lifetime was gone and he had nothing to show for that lifetime. He'd not really felt old, though, until the day the postman brought him his first Social Security check. And that day, something within Harlan resented, resisted, and exploded. The government was feeling sorry for him. You'd had all those hitless times at bat. The government was saying, you've had it. It's time to give up and retire. His restaurant customers in Corbin said they'd miss him, but his government said 65 candles on the cake was enough and sent him a pension check, told him he was old. Well, he said nuts, and he got so angry he took that $105 check and started a new business. And today that business is still prospering. For the man who failed at everything save one thing, the man who might have been a law-breaking kidnapper had he not also failed at that, the man who never got started until it was time to stop, was Harlan Sanders. That's right, Colonel Sanders. And the new business he started with his first Social Security check was Kentucky Fried Chicken. Now you know
the rest of the story. And maybe you're not Harlan Sanders. And maybe you look at this podcast and you say, well, you know what? Billy is just reflecting on old times. Well, here's the deal. We are going to get into today's episode and talking about story. And we're going to talk about copy and how to get it right. And my guest today, Cris Johnson, is not just a school assembly entertainer or a school assembly magician, but he is somebody that is out there getting it right, not just with his brand and not just with doing shows, but he is getting it right because he's helping other entertainers just like you get it right when it comes to the verbal side of your brand. We're going to talk about that right now. Here we go. Well, hey, if it isn't Cris Johnson. Cris, thank you so much for being on today's podcast. I really appreciate you carving some time out for us, as well as my listeners, to talk a little bit about copy. So, hey, thanks for joining us.
Well, thank you, Billy. I really appreciate it. And I got to tell you, this feels really bizarre being on the other end of the microphone for a change, because I'm usually the one doing the interview. So this is very different for me.
That's true. And while we're on that, go ahead. Yeah, right off the top, let's just plug your podcast because, everybody should know that you are indeed a podcaster as well. So go ahead and tell us about that real quick, can you?
Thanks. The podcast is called the Professional Magician Podcast, and it's available on Stitcher and Apple and all the typical providers. And even though it's geared toward professional magicians, it's applicable for any kind of entertainer. I mean, it really is. It's advice about from the professional level about marketing, performing, all aspects to it. And for magicians listening to this, I also review a trick every week on the podcast too. We've got interviews. Billy's going to be on an episode very soon. And then I've got solo episodes where I tackle one aspect of marketing or performing. So I try to mix it up a little bit, and it's more like a variety show as opposed to sticking to this one particular topic, but it encompasses this whole wide, wonderful world of professional entertaining in a really fun way. And I think you'll enjoy it.
And I know I've definitely enjoyed it. I've been listening to it. You're a wild man. You drop one of these once a week. And
it started about a year ago. Well, nearly a year ago, and it's been a labor of love. And you know what they say about labor.
What do they say about love?
They're both very hard.
No, it is, folks. It is a really, really great podcast. And as Cris said, listen, even if you're not a magician, if you're just an entertainer, you're going to glean some really good stuff out of this. You might drift off at the end where he reviews a trick, but that's even interesting too if you're not a magician, because he talks about the trick. He doesn't divulge methods or anything like that, but but he reviews of what he thinks of the trick. And by the way, that is very helpful. I think that's a really neat format, especially as a magician myself. So I definitely enjoy that. So let's do this, Cris. Let's jump into tell people about your origin story. Obviously you have a magician's podcast. That means you have a magician background. So tell us a little bit about Cris Johnson, the origin story of Cris Johnson.
Oh boy, that sounds so pretentious. The origin story of Cris Johnson. Well, my origin story is like a lot of other people. I got hooked on magic as a kid, and I'm 50, so I grew up watching David Copperfield specials. I think I did see one Doug Henning special, but primarily David Copperfield. Hooked on magic very much as a kid, and got a magic set as 8, 9, 10 years old, and was hooked ever since. I mean, and my interest in it kind of waxed and waned throughout the years, but I never completely gave it up. And unlike a lot of people, when I got into magic, I didn't get into it with, coins and cards at first. I got into it for bizarre magic and mentalism. So I was like, my early teens doing bizarre shows with the guy who got me into magic at these public haunted houses, where it was like a theater style show, but it was bizarre magic and really creepy stuff. And then it would change into kind of like a horror movie at the end where, people would come running out with chainsaws and everything. So it was a theatrical show, a seated performance, but with aspects of a haunted house weaved into it too. So that was kind of how I got into magic. And then as I got into my mid-20s and became really disenchanted with my my career choices, with my college education and so forth, I decided to pursue magic full time. And my high school sweetheart, we were best friends in high school. She came calling in the summer of 2002, and I was eking out a living in Pittsburgh, PA. And, part-time magician and, part-time working a job. And she encouraged, we got together, really quickly and got married. And on our honeymoon, she encouraged me to go full time. So I went full time in 2003 and never looked back. I had a very successful, 6-figure career ever since. Well, it took me a few years to get up to that, but very successful career. And then, COVID hit, which caused me to obviously pivot into copywriting and helping other entertainers get to, their performing career where they wanted to be. And that led to the development of the Professional Magician podcast and, my website where I offer services for folks. And so now I split my time between helping other entertainers achieve their goals, and I still perform myself to stay in the game. So I know what I'm talking about. And, I don't travel nearly as much anymore. Life is good. Life is very good.
Sounds like a little bit of a reflection of myself in there as it relates to not performing as much anymore, but still have my finger on the pulse. I think that's a great place to be, especially on this side, and it goes beyond just helping magicians is, here again, we have our finger on the pulse of doing shows, but we also have that ability to craft and help other entertainers along the way. So that's really cool. And it's a lot of work, isn't it?
Oh, it's very difficult, but it's very rewarding too. Like one of my earliest clients, Joe Romano, just sent me a wonderful testimonial video and told me, he goes, between now and April, I have 7 open dates, which is really cool. So I've helped him really recover his business post COVID, and he couldn't be more delighted. And I get as much of a jazz out of hearing stories like that from my clients as I ever did performing. So again, life is good.
Yeah. And you're working with some big hitters there. If you're a magician, you've probably heard the name Joe Romano, or if you're a school show performer, you definitely heard that name. So you're working with some major guys there, and it sounds like you were able to help him in copy. But tell us first of all, Cris, what is copywriting? I mean, I know what it is, but let's simplify and break it down for my audience that might be listening and they might not understand what it is and why it's so important.
Copywriting is it's basically writing. The way I define it is copywriting is any written word for persuasion. Now, it could be persuasion to get people to read an article. It could be to move people to take action, to click on a link in your website. It could be to contact you. But I look at copywriting as the written form of persuasion, moving the target audience to taking an action of some sort.
But not like clickbait, not things like that.
Oh God, no. I always advocate ethical copywriting and strategies.
As we talk anything in branding, I always tell clients, or listeners even, it has to be 100% authentic. It has to be 100% real. It has to be 100% you. So, so speak to that. You said ethical copywriting.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean, it has to be. See, everyone knows that you can say or do anything on the internet. If I wanted to, I could go on right now and post something that says, I'm the world's richest magician. I make $6 billion a year. I can do the same for you. And because much of the internet is unregulated. And I'm speaking the internet because that's mostly where I do my copywriting, but it holds true in printed form as well. People are skeptical. We're bombarded with so much communication, so much advertising, so much media per se, that people are very skeptical. So the only way you're going to have long-term success with your copywriting and with your branding is to be honest and ethical. The old strategies that used to work 10 years ago will no longer work today. So you have to be honest, you have to be ethical, you have to be descriptive, and you have to do it in a way that communicates the value of what you're trying to communicate and show why you're the person for the job, bringing this back to entertainers. But you have to minimize the hyperbole and it's kind of like we've all done this in the United States. You're driving along some dirt road, and it's in some little podunk town. Population. I just watched Tremors. Perfection. Population 14. And you see this little podunk town, and you see a little hamburger stand, and it goes, "World famous hot dogs." Come on, that's what I'm talking about. That kind of stuff doesn't fly anymore. So when I say ethical, I could say I'm the world's greatest magician, but I'm not. So it's kind of like when I see entertainers, they proclaim themselves master magician. Who gave you that title? And that's not unethical, but it does bump up into an area of unbelievability, in my opinion. So so that's my little tirade against overt hyperbole and ethics in copywriting.
I just call those things outright lies,
Yeah.
right? You have to have the proof to back up what it is that you are saying.
Exactly.
It could be a 7-year-old, on the internet saying these things or whatever. And, it doesn't make sense, right? So, you're going to be found out sooner or later if you don't write copy or have copy that is written from your standpoint, your accolades, those sort of things. So speaking of that, is why should entertainers or even my listeners why should they care about copywriting?
Well, it helps you book more gigs at higher fees, plain and simple. Because anybody can go on the online and say, "Hey, hire me. I'm a magician." And here's the reality of it: most people do not care about magic. I mean, I know that's or entertaining. It's a harsh lesson, but people really don't care. They book an entertainer to solve a problem. So effective copywriting can explain ethically, succinctly, and with persuasion over why you're the person who can solve their problem. For instance, if you're a school assembly presenter, they don't want to book an assembly. Well, they do want to book an assembly presenter to entertain the kids, but there's ancillary and primary goals above that and adjacent to that. Then maybe they want to entertain the kid, or they want to educate the kids about the values of character education. Maybe they want to motivate their children to read more and check out more books at the library, those kind of things. So those are some of the goals of a school assembly presenter are going to be asked to fulfill with their presentation, and good copy can help you do that. Birthday parties, if you're a birthday party entertainer, juggler, magician, whatever, what's the birthday mom want? She wants her kids to have a good time, but she also wants, and this, people will argue about this, but I guarantee it's there. They want to show their neighbors, hey, we can put on a party. They want love from their children, all these hidden benefits. And nobody's really going to say that you can allude to and show why you can make their party the best ever. With effective copy. Corporate performers, same thing. What does the HR director want? They want a team building experience. In fact, I just booked my first corporate show in 3 years. Hopefully I don't regret it because I don't like corporate work. But the guy, the guy said he booked me because I had copy that talked about the team building aspect of a good entertainment for their holiday party. And they also don't want to be embarrassed, and they don't want the company to look bad. All these different things. So why does an entertainer want copy? To show their prospects why they can fulfill the goals, needs, and wants of the prospect in a way that other entertainers cannot. Most magician websites that I look at, and yes, I know this is geared toward other entertainers, but in my realm, I work mostly with magicians. I've looked at literally hundreds of magicians' websites. I was doing an experiment a couple of years ago, and most magicians' websites are all about I. I've won this award. I've done this. I've been in magic since this age. It's all I statements. And I statements aren't bad, but they're statements that don't speak to the wants, needs, and desires of their target market. And good copy can help you get around that. And again, I'll repeat myself, show why you're the person for the job.
Yeah. And you touched on exactly what I was going to ask as well, or even say, and you did a great job at doing that because you've checked out so many different websites. And I was going to say the same thing. I see a lot of that everybody's like, look at all the stuff I've done. Look at who I perform for. And you don't see enough about at the end of the day, and that is what the customer or your buying audience really wants, and that is what's in it for me,
right?
What's in it for them? And I like the fact that as you write the copy, you are addressing the issues, the questions, the concerns that they have. So you're hitting those pain points, but you're also telling them how you're going to fix it. How you, as you said, how did you say that? You're the one for the job. You had a very nice way of saying that, but
yeah. You're the person that can satisfy the wants, needs, and desires of the prospect.
That's really good. We're talking about websites and things like that, but is copywriting for website only? I mean, I can think of how it could relate to shows and how you speak in a show. What are some other areas and arenas you work in aside from just website copy?
I basically built my business on the back of direct response copywriting, which is which for me back in the day in the late 90s when I was first going. I wasn't full time yet, but I was moving toward marketing myself aggressively professionally, and I built my career sending out sales letters, 8-page sales letters to schools and different organizations and whatnot.
I think if you were an entertainer back in the 90s, I think we all did that. I know I did personally. There was a guy that developed something for magicians specifically. It was these long, lengthy sales letters, and you would do a direct mail campaign. And I just don't think that works today. People's attention is so short and limited that people aren't going to read a 5-page sales letter anymore. So I don't know. To me, those days are gone, and we've had a shift for sure. What do you think?
I mean, well, copywriting goes back hundreds of years. So, it's while the media has changed and the delivery systems have changed, the basic tenets of copywriting have remained consistent for hundreds of years.
Let me ask you this, because there are people that would say that direct mail marketing is dead. And my philosophy is I don't think so, but I'd love your take on it. And I'd love for you to share with the listeners of what your take is on direct mail marketing. Does it still work?
Absolutely. Oh my God, is it ever? In fact, pre-COVID, I was doing a couple hundred schools a year, and mostly I had built my school performing career, to where it was on the back of email marketing and SEO for my website, search engine optimization. And I was busy as I wanted to be. I mean, I was literally at the point where I was passing the point of burnout. And I happened to speak to a couple of school principals near the end there, and they said, we get all these emails. I'm surprised that I read yours. We get so many emails from entertainers, and I got one the other day. It was a letter, and it really stood out because so few people do it anymore. Direct mail is not dead. It has never been dead. It will continue to thrive and grow, and it is still one of the most valuable ways to market any business. As far as entertainers go, most people have gone the social media route because it's quicker, faster, and cheaper, but direct mail can make a comeback because not as many people are using it. And even in the library market that I'm still active in, right up until COVID, I was actively marketing libraries, primarily using postcards and short form sales letters. And if I did it now, I'm sure it'd still be successful. I just, I'm not full time anymore. Direct mail still is very viable, and I will bet it will continue to be even more viable in the coming years. Again, because so many magicians have hitched their wagons to the social media train, which I've got some strong opinions about that, but probably beyond the scope of this interview.
Sure. And does direct mail marketing work? I think I agree with that. We're at election season, midterms, right? And I can't tell you how many postcards I've gotten just in the past few months. Right now, obviously they have a big budget to do that, but they're just dangling that carrot in front of me all the time. Right.
Yeah.
So I'm seeing more on the side of in my mailbox, my actual real mailbox, as opposed to my inbox, or, and not that I don't see advertising that way online, but, I'm seeing those postcards whether I want to see them or not. Right. Or even whether I choose to throw them away. So I agree with you, and it does, and it's a very economical way to do that as well, is to get a postcard out there, and not just one, right?
Right.
You build a campaign. A lot of guys will, I've talked to other entertainers in the past, and they say, "Well, I've sent this out, and it wasn't successful." Well,
Right.
when did you send it? How many did you send? And they expect this once and done. It's like the old days, putting a yellow page ad in the phone book and saying, "Man, it's like the Steve Martin thing. I'm going to be somebody now." Right.
Oh God, Navin Johnson, my hero.
But you have to, and that's a whole nother thing too, with just postcards and marketing in general. It has to be a campaign, and it has to be not just an effective campaign graphically or visually, or even with the copy, but it needs to be a campaign that is hitting them and targeting people at the right time and the right moment. But here again, I digress. That's a whole different conversation, I think, and I don't want to get too far off on a bunny trail here. But go back to how you had mentioned like SEO and things like that earlier, and I wanted to make sure I jumped onto that. Because you actually write, I guess this is a big thing that I kind of missed in our interview here already, and that's that you do help entertainers, regardless of magicians. You said you help a lot of magicians, but are you primarily writing for websites at this point, or what are you doing that way?
Yeah, I am primarily writing for websites because that's what magicians want. I mean, I've mentioned to a couple of clients, let's consider some direct mail, and so far that no, they just kind of stick with the web stuff. But just based on what what the market wants, that's primarily what I'm doing right now. The biggest thing that I help magicians with is helping change the copy in their website such that we can get them to to rise in Google search rankings. Like I said, my one client, Joe Romano, I've got him on page 1 of Google for several different keywords, and he's delighted with it. And it's there's an elegance and an art to SEO copywriting, because again, the primary purpose is to serve the reader, to serve the human eyeballs, while also doing it in an ethical strategy to serve our Google overlords, because they're in charge. It's their world and we're just living in it. So you've got to serve those two masters in a way that will complement each other. So you have to write for humans. So I see a lot of bad SEO copywriting where it's not written for humans. I mean, it's very clunky written, and like, okay, if you go to the Bash or to Gig Salad, you see certain entertainers' profiles that's clearly written for Google. They'll say something like, "Yes, I offer fun, captivating corporate programs, corporate speaking programs, corporate mentalism programs for corporate holiday parties, corporate they just stack all those keywords, and it reads like a laundry list. It doesn't read like an actual conversation that somebody would actually have. But anyway, I'm going on a rant, which I tend to do.
I think that's a good rant to address, Chris, just because here again, it's back to what I said earlier. It's you're not really speaking to their needs. Sure, that might be a particular buyer's need within that laundry list, but here again, you're not saying, "Hey, this is what's in it for you." Right.
Right.
So I see what you're saying. You do have it. You have to have a balance there, right? As far as you said, or I don't know how you said it, something along the lines of, speaking to a human, right?
Yeah.
But I'll be the first to admit that I still find SEO and search engine optimization to be very, very confusing. And I'm a guy that I am online. And I mean, I have so many WordPress plugins. I have, what is it? Yith. So a Yith is a thing for search engine optimization. I don't think that's right. You're not speaking, so I'm thinking that might be wrong.
Yeah, I've never heard of Yith before. Are you talking? You're going to talk about Yoast, are you?
Yoast, yes, Yoast. Yoast is what I meant.
Boy, well, you had one
have
of the letters right.
way too many plugins on the website, believe me. But I even have that, and I still find it very difficult to understand SEO. I've read articles, I've gone online, and so thank God for somebody like you that understands SEO. And I imagine that's probably changing like frequently, right? I'm sure like Google ratings and all, or Google's changing all the time, and it's just this big wheel that keeps churning. I can't imagine
Oh yeah.
what you have to do to keep up with all that. So, like I say, my head spins, and if somebody's better at doing it, let them do it.
Honestly, it's I found a really good teacher. Her name is Heather Lloyd Martin, and she's been in the SEO game for over 20 years, and she's like one of the pioneers in SEO. And I took her certification class, and because I'm a member of her class and I'm certified SEO copywriter, I get all the updates. I get in-depth articles every month from her about the changes coming up in Google. In fact, just a few weeks ago, Google did in fact launch a new update. And it's SEO is actually, from a guy like me who actually likes this stuff, it's actually easier now than it's ever been, because Google's algorithms are evolving to the point where it's easy. You can write like a human and slip your keywords in there naturally without having to. You don't have to be as clunky about it. So write for a human. Speak to their wants, needs, and desires, and yeah, and there's more to it than that. I'm simplifying it because I don't want your listeners to fall asleep. But I'll just say that SEO now is easier than it's ever been, and I'll just without trying to complicate it, it really is. And a lot of the old tricks no longer work. Like one of the old tricks used to be, if you had a blue background on your website and you wanted to really stack up the keywords and make Google notice you, you would take your keywords and put them in the background of your website the same color. So the human eye wouldn't see it, so your website would look normal, but then Google's codes, their spiders would crawl, and the code would pick up all these extra keywords and help you rank higher. And that did used to work, but now it does not. It's one of the quickest, easiest ways to get you blacklisted. And there's a magician out there, a very well-known kids magician. If I was to say his name, everybody would probably know him. No, it's not Joe Romano. But this guy told me privately, and him and I are working together now. So when I launch this new site, I can say, hey, I built this guy's site. That there was a magician who did that, putting his name in the same color of the background of his website to glom off of his SEO. And as recently as, was it last year or the year before? It was fairly recently, because it was during the height of the pandemic. This guy and I were Zooming almost every week. And so yeah, those old techniques people are still doing, and it's the quickest way to get yourself shot in the foot regarding Google and your website.
That's an amazing trick I would have never thought of, but obviously it doesn't work now anyway. So hey, but
no, I mean it used to, but Google's onto it, and it's amazing how many people will come up and say, "Hey, I got this idea," and it's like they just thought of it, and like, "Oh God, you're killing me."
It sounds to me like you geek out on the copy end and this SEO stuff as much as I do on helping entertainers visually brand themselves. I can get very geeky with that, and it sounds like you're a geek.
oh God, I'm hardcore nerd. Yeah.
Well, tell us, if a guy wants to take a stab at this, and he's like, hey, he's not in a position, he doesn't want to necessarily hire you yet, but he's curious, and we'll get to that. I know you have some resources for people as well, but if I just, if I wanted to do some stuff myself, what would you say would be a good key for like effective copywriting? What are some things some do's and don'ts, things like that I might need to know? Can you expand on that a little bit more?
Primarily, you have to know your market. I mean, that is, if there was a 10 commandments of copywriting, or for magicians and entertainers and everything, that would be, in my opinion, I'm going to say that, over and over again, my opinion. Number one is know your market, know who you're talking to, know what their wants, needs, and desires are, know what their goals are, and how your services can help them achieve those goals. And then once you know all that, write to them in a way that will help them achieve those goals.
Whoa, hey, let's slam on the brakes here just for a moment and go back. I want you to hear that again, what Cris just said, because it's brilliant. It's easy. Sometimes we overcomplicate this stuff, but this is really easy, basic information to get, and it's really important to write this stuff like you're in second grade, right? Or write it from a second grade perspective. Cris even talks a little bit about that as well as he coaches, and it's really important to break that down. So listen to what he says one more time.
number one is know your market, know who you're talking to, know what their wants, needs, and desires are, know what their goals are, and how your services can help them achieve those goals. And then once you know all that, write to them in a way that will help them achieve those goals, or write to them in a way that will communicate to them that you can help them achieve their goals. Now, in terms of the nuts and bolts of copywriting, keep your sentence structure at or about a 6th grade reading level. That's short sentences.
I was always taught a 2nd grade reading level, but I'm with you.
Yeah. Use a lot of subheads in your copy. Don't have like these long walls of text. Break it up. Have images on your site too, so that again, your copy is broken up by images, so that it's not, I'll say that again, walls of text. But the biggest thing is just speaking to copywriting, teaching somebody how to copyright is such an in-depth topic. But the biggest thing is simply, to speak to them like they're humans, speak to their wants, needs, and desires, and know your market. That's the most fundamental, important thing. I'll give you an example of what I mean. One of my clients, I just got through doing a website for him a couple of months ago, and he was lamenting over the fact that he's got magicians in his area charging $50 in 2022. And he sent me this one guy's website, and then I'm building up to copywriting and making all this tie in. And he sent me a couple of people's websites, and the one guy's website, it wasn't, for somebody who built the site for himself, it wasn't awful. It wasn't the worst that I've seen. It was bad, but it was like on the higher level of bad. But the worst thing about it was that it was a magic for all occasions kind of website, where it was I do, corporate parties, daycares, birthday, every market under the sun. And then you go to his video page, and he's got a video of him doing Buried Alive, somebody's backyard doing Buried Alive. Yeah. And he's advertising he does kid shows. I mean, I can't think of anything more inappropriate for a kid show magician to have a video of you burying yourself in the dirt. I mean, it's like, oh my God. So this guy just doesn't care about his individual markets. He's like just going to cast the wide net, try to catch as many fish as he can possibly catch. And he's going to do material that makes him happy, but doesn't serve the wants and needs. I can't think of a single market off the top of my head, maybe a television special, but where most of us are going to do live shows. I mean, corporate trade shows, birthdays, daycare, schools. I can't think of a single market where it'd be appropriate to market yourself with a Buried Alive stunt. I mean, that was just like jaw-droppingly, tone deaf to me.
I'm banging my head on my microphone as we talk. That's not an isolated situation. I think it's one worth addressing while we're on that topic. You can't be all things to all people.
No.
You have to know your market. I'm a big believer in really niching down. And some people say, well, niche down too much. They say, well, you're not going to get work. But I say that's a better not a better thing to not get more work. But I'd rather work less and make much more money because of being niched down. In my case, mental health market and working with people with mental health and educating people that way. It's a very tight niche market, but hey, I don't work as much. So makes it much easier. So like I say, I digress, but I think it's a good thing to talk about here while we're on the topic is you can't be all those things because your message just gets completely muddled.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, yeah. I couldn't agree. I couldn't agree more. In the world of magic, and again, I believe this will apply to all entertainers too, but I don't know for sure. But this ought to speak from my from my standpoint. In the world of magic, they're essentially two different camps. If you're going to niche down, you've got the kids camp, the kids entertainer camp, and you've got the adult entertainers camp. The people who are adult entertainers, they might do trade shows, corporate motivational speaking workshops, holiday parties, things of that ilk. Kid show entertainers might do birthday parties, preschools, or daycares, school assemblies, things like that. And you can indeed niche it down much further. I am a school assembly specialist. I mean, before COVID hit, I was, I was at well over $100,000 a year. I was knocking on the door of $200,000 when COVID hit, and that was doing primarily school assemblies. And I would also fill out my schedule in the summer when school's out with libraries, and simply because I didn't want to be idle for 2 months. So that is a very tight niche, and I was mostly an educational guy too. So not only, a lot of entertainers, they want to get into school assemblies and do fun shows, and you're going to have a hard time doing that without, having those educational things. So not only was I a school assembly specialist, I was primarily an educational school assembly specialist. So, I mean, that's a pretty tight niche. And there's people out there who are, who niche down even more than me. I know there's people out there, the only thing they do is science shows. I don't know about now, but I know when I was communicating on a regular basis, I know Doc Dixon. He won on Penn and Teller last season, and him and I have been friends for about 20 years. And I know a couple of years before COVID, he was thinking about branching out and doing other assembly programs. But for years, for at least 20 years, he made most of his money in school assemblies on one program, his bully prevention program. And that was and I know Doc, he was busier than heck. So that was a very tight niche for him. That was very successful for many, many years. And your fees can go higher too. I mean, a cardiologist gets more money than a general practitioner. I mean, my fees went up tremendously when I started specializing just in schools, because I was a generalist too. I mean, I would do corporate. I remember one 36-hour period, I had to do a school assembly, a daycare, a corporate motivational speaking program, and a nighttime post-prom for high school kids, all in one 36-hour period. Boy, you want to talk about shifting rapidly. It was hard as hell. So, if you niche down, your fees will go up and you can make more money.
Absolutely. By the way, you and I are going to collaborate a little bit, and I'm not trying to sell a bag of goods here, folks, but I honestly think that this stuff is just that important. Cris and I are working together where he's helped me write copy for my website, and he's helping me with SEO optimization. And one of the other things that we haven't touched on, Cris, that I think is really important is that automated emails.
Oh,
right?
Yeah.
So you do writing for that as well, where it's like, hey, you have this stack of emails that go out on a timely manner, and Cris can write them. In the meantime, tell us, I know you have some free resources for people that they can really get and see easily how to begin this process on the verbal side of branding.
Yeah. So my website with all my services is yes, I'm old school. I still say www, so stop it. So www.theprofessionalmagicianclubpro.com. Again, that's theprofessionalmagicianclubpro.com. And on there, you can see my services. I offer things for SEO copywriting, email automated marketing, so that you can stay in contact with your leads. I build websites, all kinds of different things. But when you go to the website, click on the button that says free stuff. You click on the button that says free stuff, and you can get a free report. And the free report is simply, and I'll even tell you the headline of the free report. It says, use this 2-word secret to eliminate your competition and become your area's highest paid magician. So it's just a real quick thing. You fill it out and you'll get that free report, and you'll also be entered into my my list for my newsletter every week. It's a weekly newsletter where I talk about magic philosophy, performing, and ways to make your business better and book more shows at higher fees. And there's also my links to all my podcast episodes on there too. But that's the website, theprofessionalmagicianclubpro.com. Click on the link at the top that says free stuff and get that free report. Again, it's use this 2-word secret to eliminate your competition and become your area's highest paid magician. And I will say this in all candor, this is one of the strategies that makes me it's such a success. I mean, to this day, I have not spent a dime on marketing in, let me think, in 5 years, I think. And I still have people contacting me all over the country. I wanted to book my services. Just yesterday, a guy from Colorado contacted me, wanted a quote for me to do 13 schools over the course of 2 weeks next year. And I got to turn it down because, I mean, I live in New York, and the idea of flying to Colorado for 2 weeks, being away from my family and my dogs, like, no, just no. Yeah, and that's all. And the reason why I haven't had to spend any money on any marketing is partially for SEO, and specifically this particular secret reveals how I've been able to get my website to the point where I get all these leads, on an almost daily basis. I get leads from all over the country. Yesterday, I got leads from California, Minnesota, Colorado, and that happens almost every single day based on this secret that I reveal. And by the way, this secret that I reveal, almost no magician is using it. And the ones who are using it incorrectly. So, and it's not turnkey, but if you put the work in, it can really benefit you in a major way and help you get to the point where you can have leads like I do coming in almost every day without having to spend a dime in marketing. I mean, it really is that powerful. 5 years, I haven't spent a dime marketing my services in 5 years.
That's fantastic. That is really fantastic. And by the way, I did grab that 2-word thing from you. I just have to say, listeners, go get it. It's worth it. I also want to say that Cris isn't going to pound you with emails every day like some of these guys.
I think it's every 3 days.
But you'll also get on his list. I have to say that I'm impressed that way, because most people are like, here's another one, here's another one. And that funnel just gets to a point where it's pushed out so much with that auto generation that you just like, goodbye. And you don't do that, which I sincerely appreciate, and I think most listeners would appreciate as well. Do yourself a favor, go get that. One more time on that, where to find that again, Cris?
It is theprofessionalmagicianclubpro.com. Pro as in professional. The professionalmagicianclubpro.com. Once you're on the main page for the site, just go to the top, click on the link that says free stuff.
Cris, thank you so much for being a part of the podcast today. I really appreciate it for sure. And I know my listeners are going to get some great stuff from you as well out of this. So thank you.
Oh, my pleasure. It's been a blast. And like I said, it's been very unusual being on the other end of the microphone this time. So that was pretty cool, too.
Well, anything else you want to say before I take us out of this particular episode of the podcast?
No, other than the fact that it really is symbiotic. You need the words and you need the graphics to come together to make your whole business as attractive to your clients as you want. You need the graphic element and you need the copy element. They complement each other very well. And I stink at graphics, so having somebody like Billy that I can work with really complements my business very well too. So it would behoove you to check out both of our stuff.
Absolutely. Well, thank you again, Cris. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure.
Well, there you have it, folks. Thank you once again for taking time to tune into the Branding for Entertainers podcast. And in this episode with Cris Johnson, we simply only just scratched the surface of the verbal side of your brand. And I can tell you this, I have more of this side of branding coming up in future episodes. But in the meantime, let me just say that if you're struggling when it comes to getting it right with your brand message or your marketing, I want you to know that I have some additional resources for you. And here's what I've done. After a couple years, I finally put together my video lecture. And think of it like this. It's a 54-minute personal coaching session with just you and I, where we cover many more aspects of branding that go deeper than this podcast can even allow for. And in the video, you're going to be able to watch it. You can stop it. You can go back. And you're also going to be able to download it if you'd like to do that. And it also includes a lot of downloadable tools as well as cheat sheets that I've created specifically to help you move past your competition in this business of entertainment. And here's the thing, it's going to help you fast track your branding, and it's going to get you in the right path as an entertainer. And here's the thing, if you can afford 2 cups of coffee, yep, that's it, 2 cups of coffee, you can afford the price of this video along with 37 pages of downloadables. Yeah, you heard that right. 37 pages of downloadables, of notes and cheat sheets that I've put together, and I've really put my heart and my soul into this. And here's the thing. Here's my promise to you. If you get this and you get nothing out of it, I'm going to stand behind this 100%. And if you tell me, Billy, I got nothing out of it, I'm going to give your money back, no questions asked. It's that ironclad. So I believe in it that much, and it's really, truly that simple. But here's what I believe to be true, and that's that you're going to gain so much value out of this that for, are you ready for this price? That for the $14.95, yes, that's right, $14.95 that it is, which is the price tag today, you're going to begin to go ahead and rise above your competition in the entertainment market just based on some of this information that I'm going to provide for you. I promise you. And here's the thing. The real value of this is $49.95, but here's what I've realized. I want to really keep this completely simple, and I also want to keep it accessible to the amateurs and pros alike so that everyone that desires to grow as an entertainer has the opportunity to get this. That's why it is only $14.95, folks. So if you want to begin to fast track your brand as an entertainer, and you want to get noticed, and you want to get better gigs and even better pay, I want you to go over to a special link that I have just for you, and it's brandingentertainers.com/brand better. Again, that's brandingentertainers.com/brand better. And I've got that great deal. It's just waiting for you over there right now, and I'm excited to help you further in your journey as an entertainer. And let me just say that until next time, my name is Billy Diamond, and I want you to be successful in your visual, verbal, and your virtual branding. Have a great day.